Welcome, teacher friend. I am so excited that you are a part of this virtual conference and that you're in my session. My name is Tanya Marshall, and I am also known as the Butterfly Teacher. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, small group instruction. But before we get started, I want you to be entered into one of our amazing giveaway prizes in our raffle drawing. So would you please hop on over to Instagram, take a picture of yourself attending my session, and tag me at Tanya G. Marshall. Be sure to include the hashtag UETC2021 so that you can be entered in one of our amazing raffle prizes. Okay, so let's get started. I started my career as a second grade teacher, and I did that for 4 years. Fell in love with center rotations and small group instruction. And then I moved to 4th grade and had so many people tell me, well, we just do whole group everything. So I just want to tell you, I am here from experience to say it is absolutely possible to consistently run small groups in your upper elementary classroom. You know you're in the right place if you want to have centers, but you're just not sure how to get it set up. Or if you want some fresh ideas on how to do center time in your classroom, we're going to look at a 45, 60, and 90-minute block, and I'm going to walk you through a general, like a scenario for each one of these so that you can get some ideas for how to run centers. And I just want you to have confidence that you can do this. Before you start vigorously writing notes, here are some things to keep in mind. First, all of the ideas I'm sharing with you today can work whether you have block scheduling or self-contained classes. When I talk about blocks, I'm just basically talking about a chunk of time that you have in your classroom. So these ideas will work whether you are switching students with a co-teacher or not. Also take into account transition times. For each of the blocks of time that I'm going to talk about, I am not including transitions, but I'll touch on that some more. And you will definitely need to do some prep work, like giving pre-assessments in order to group your students accordingly. Let's kick off with our 45-minute block. So I want to, first of all, say I have literacy center rotations written in red. But this can apply no matter what subject area you teach, whether it's math, science, language arts, social studies. So let's go through a pretend lesson, and let's say I want to teach defining vocabulary words in context. I am going to start off with a warm-up or a whole group activity that's like a lesson hook to review this skill. And I'm going to use plickers. Now, I'm not being paid to talk about plickers or endorse them. I naturally just love plickers. So if you haven't checked them out, please go. It's a free service that allows you to play a game with your students. So I'll use that as my warm-up. And we'll practice defining vocabulary words in context using this hook. And then I already have my students grouped based on their ability or needs, and that's the pre-assessment part I mentioned. I'll have a targeted 30-minute group with me at the teacher table, and then all of my other students will be in groups playing vocabulary games, around the classroom. And yes, I am a firm believer in having quality time. So that's why I have a 30-minute block so that we can really get some targeted practice. And then we will come back together as a whole group for 5 minutes where they will do an exit ticket with 1 or 2 vocabulary words. Now, when I say groups, it doesn't have to be 3 to 5 students every single time. I often put groups of 2 students together, which is technically a pair. And I'll be honest, I do that a lot to cut down on noise and chaos because, let's face it, student behavior has a huge impact on small group instruction. So I love centers and activities where I can have my students in pairs and then they can work together one-on-one for a center activity. Don't think a group needs to be a literal group of students. Now let's take a look at a 60-minute block of time. Remember I said I have literacy center rotations written in red, but this can apply to any subject? Well, let's do a pretend math lesson. I want to teach comparing decimals. So for my 10-minute whole group warm-up, we're going to do a PowerPoint slideshow with only 8 to 10 questions. And since this is a review, I am going to keep it simple, have my students pull out their whiteboards and show me which decimal is the greatest or the least. And then we'll divide up into small groups, but notice with a 60-minute block, I would recommend 2 20-minute rotations. So you would have your first group at the table doing intervention work based on assessments, and then you would rotate and get a second small group doing the same lesson. This would probably be a guided math lesson, while all the other students in your classroom are dispersed either in pairs or other small groups working on different math decimal games. Once you have had that targeted 40-minute time at your teacher table and your students are out having their hands-on collaborative games for their 40 minutes, then you bring everyone back together for a 10-minute whole group exit ticket. For mine, I would use a Google Forms activity. So far, each of the time frames that I have talked about, they're for review lessons. This does not mean that you can't use these blocks of time for introducing a new skill, which we're actually going to look at in the next one. Plus, each of the time frames that I'm discussing, you're going to get these for free. And as you can see, they're bookmarks, so you'll be able to hopefully laminate them or put them somewhere nearby in your lesson planning so that you can use them just to get ideas. Whenever I am at the table with my students, I usually will wear something like a different lanyard on Center's Day, or a hat, a Hawaiian lei, something that's a visual to let the students that I am not meeting with at my teacher table know that I am not available to them, which means I spend about 6 to 8 weeks at the beginning of the school year training my students on what they should be doing when I am at the teacher table and they are performing their center activities without me. With these things in mind, you want to make sure to keep your supplies easily accessible for your students. My favorite way to organize and store my centers is to buy those jumbo size manila envelopes and laminate them. And then I take a picture of the center with instructions, put that on top of the folder, and all of the center supplies are inside. So then my students can just walk over to I love to keep those 10 drawer rolling carts in my classroom labeled monthly. And that's where my students can go and grab their centers or any extra supplies that they may need without interrupting me. Now let's take a look at a 90-minute chunk of time. For longer blocks of time, I really like to use these for introducing a new skill. My students still get that whole group lesson with me to learn something new, but also get hands-on practice in small groups to keep it fun. Since it's a longer block of time, I like to start with a 15-minute whole group lesson, and we'll switch back to language arts for this one. So I want to teach the skill of how to infer during reading. For our warm-up, I'm going to introduce this with a scaffolding lesson, and the inferences PowerPoint is going to start with images, then move up to sentences, then move up to short paragraphs, and that's how I like to scaffold. We will practice this together with simple examples for 15 minutes or so. And then based on assessments, pre-assessments, remember you've done this beforehand, you're going to divide your students into groups, and the students who need your attention the most for reading, you'll start with that group and do a 30-minute guided reading lesson with them. And then you will rotate, get your next group of students that need you the most, and you'll have a second small group at your teacher table for another 30 minutes. All the other students are doing their inference and reading games, And I train my students to stay engaged for this long by using choice boards. I love choice boards. Some people call them learning menus. You can call them whatever you want. I call them a gold mine because I spend that initial time at the beginning of the school year training my students how to choose their centers. And I just showed you how I organize them. And that's how they are able to stay engaged in small groups for 60 minutes while I get lots of good focus time with my students at the teacher table. You can use this strategy no matter what kind of curriculum you have also, which is another reason why I really like it. And maybe depending on your students' needs, you might be able to squeeze in a third group. But if you do that during a 90-minute block, then obviously you would have 3 20-minute groups at your teacher table, and that's very possible. Then you would wrap up with the whole class. I would use inference task cards since we're talking about inferring for this pretend lesson. And I would use 15 minutes of inference task cards as I rotate around the classroom to see, can my students independently do this new skill that I taught? I have a clipboard where I can take some notes. Can I apply any of these ideas to virtual learning? Absolutely. It's basically what so many of us were forced to do this year. And I can tell you again from experience that you can use Zoom and Google Classroom to set up center rotations through online teaching. When you head over to my website, thebutterflyteacher.com, you're going to see a lot of these blog posts that talk about digital centers, how to have math talks using Zoom breakout rooms. So just head over there to see examples of how you could do small group instruction with virtual learning. As we close, here are a few things that I want you to keep in mind. Actually, 3. Number 1, you may be feeling all the feels right now, but I can't emphasize enough the training part. In fact, let me show you what I use to train my students. When it comes to training my students and preparing them for the school year, I have referred to this book every year that I've been a teacher. As you can see, it's gotten a lot of use over the years. This is Harry Wong's First Days of School. Again, not a paid endorsement. This is something that I have used and loved, and it has helped me so much to set up that strong foundation for the beginning of the school year. And there are lots of sections on how to set up your small group instructions, no matter what grade level you teach. The second thing to keep in mind is that you have your free packet that explains more. And the third thing is that I have a step-by-step guide that breaks everything down for you. I have a few more random tidbits that I want to share with you at this time before we close. How are you feeling, my friend? Did you get something useful? Did you get something that you can take back to your classroom? Even if it was a little small golden nugget, I do hope that you heard or saw something that made you think, aha, I can do that in my classroom this year. Because of the sake of time, we can't dig deep into a lot of details when it comes to how to run centers in our upper elementary classroom. But honey, you know, I am not going to leave you hanging, okay? So let me just randomly go through a couple of key points. If you're wondering, well, which time block should I use? That depends on your schedule. That depends on your students. You may be in a position where you can choose and rotate between these, which I have done plenty of times before. I do not run small group instruction every single day of the week, and I do not choose the same block of time every time, okay? So it depends. And that's the reason why I wanted to go over several, and that's the reason why I'm giving you these for free. I'm also including, I hope you can see this because I'm sitting in front of a bright window. I'm including an extra 120-minute block that shows, let me hold it up for you better, that shows how could you have 4 small groups. If you are fortunate to have room moms and dads or volunteers, TAs in your classroom, an intervention specialist maybe, then it would be awesome sauce to get them in the classroom with you during these small group times, and you have flexibility, okay? The second thing that I am often asked, and I feel like this is the big kahuna, behavior. What do you do when you have behavior problems in your classroom? Well, again, I only have so much time in this session, and I feel like behavior could be a 30-minute conversation by itself. Yes, right, there are full moons, Friday the 13th, and all sorts of issues that get in the way. Your students are not going to be perfect every single day. So I do have some ideas and strategies for what I've done over the years with behavior students. And I am going to answer a lot of your specific questions in our chat session, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So hang tight on behavior. The third issue that always comes up is grading. How in the world do you grade all of these centers, Tanya? And my answer is that I don't. My focus and goal as a teacher is to keep students engaged with practice. And that's why I have these small group instructions some days of the week. And because I want this to be hands-on practice, I don't take those up for a grade. As I mentioned, I use choice boards, which have been a lifesaver for me. And I just check the choice boards at the end of the week for completion. We set goals in my classroom, and the goals depend on the students' needs for that year. So I don't have the same goals every week. But most of the time, we average about 5 to 10 centers on their choice boards. And I just check to make sure that they completed those 10 centers for the week on their choice boards. I don't take an accuracy grade. That's a big deal. If you work in a school that requires grading, this might be a challenge. Last but not least, I want to mention the guidebook that I have available for you, which is a full breakdown and the big takeaway for you, and it's how to launch literacy centers in your upper elementary classroom. Let me tell you what this baby has for you. As I already mentioned, all of the strategies that I talked about in this session work no matter what subject area you teach. But in this guidebook, I walk you through specifically how to get started with centers, how to group your students, different lesson plan ideas, how to choose your centers. And since the focus of it is on literacy centers, I have lots of examples of literacy centers in the guidebook. I talk about how to organize your centers, helpful supplies to use, so much more. So this guidebook breaks everything down, and there's a link for it in your freebie, or you can grab it directly from my TPT store, Tanya G. Marshall, the Butterfly Teacher. Not only can you get more information from the free resource and the guide that I just mentioned, but I am also having a chat session on Friday the 9th, 11 a.m. So on Friday at 11 a.m., I want you to come back, ask me questions. I'll clear up anything. I want you to feel empowered. I want you to relight that fire of motivation to kick off an amazing school year and have small group instructions in your classroom. Run small groups, not let them run you. Okay? So I'll see you at my chat session. Don't forget, tag me on Instagram with your photo to be included in our raffle prizes. Put at Tanya G. Marshall and hashtag UETC 2021. Many blessings to you, my friend. See you at the chat session.